And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Justin. Joining me as always, my co-hosts, David and JP. We are continuing our Framing a Rookie Draft series and talking about Rookie Pick 103. Our whole Rookie Pick series is based off of Superflex, Start 11, 1.75 tight end premium decision tree, unless specified differently. So, real quick, before we take a look at the players we'll be considering here, recap at the 101, we've already taken Caleb Williams. At the 102, we have taken Marvin Harrison Jr. So, with that in mind, I'm going to throw it to JP. Can you tell us what players are really in consideration at this 103 slot?
Yeah, I think with the dynasty market now, we're looking primarily at three players, and that would be Jaden Daniels, who is a fifth-year player who also just won the Heisman and has a lot of rushing upside, had over 1,000 yards. Also, his teammate Malik Neighbors, who you could argue is one of the best wide receivers in the last 7 or 8 classes. Definitely would have been the wide receiver one in last year. And thirdly would be Drake May, who personally I love, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that. But a lot of people that I think are very sharp have him as a 1A to Caleb. They also say that he would have been one of the best quarterback prospects last couple of years as well. Last year, he might have edged out Bryce. But yeah, these three guys are all very, very enticing.
Yeah, we definitely have three pieces here that in a lot of other draft classes might be in consideration at that 101, 102. So, given that, we will make a selection for who our pick is at the end of the episode. But first, as always, we really want to evaluate what else can we do with this pick because we don't always want to stick and pick. So we're going to actually throw it to David, who has a major move involving his 103 in the last week.
Yes, sir. So it's a 12-team superflex, 2 tight end premium, 0.1 point per carry, start 11, and there are some pretty impactful big play bonuses. I didn't want to list them all, but it's both big play and big play touchdown, and they stack on each other, so it adds up quick. Maybe we should have made a banner for this trade, to be honest, because there's a few pieces, but it's 103, 202, a 25-second, and Devon A-Chain for Justin Jefferson and Andrews. Oh, I threw in Cole Turner as well, but that was a piece of no value in this trade. He just mentioned he liked them, so I gave him to him. This one was pretty in depth. It took a lot of negotiation, a lot of patience. I almost moved on a couple times. I think I talked with you guys several times over the course of this negotiation. In fact, I think Justin, you told me to walk away at one point, but I felt like the value was there. I felt like we were getting closer and closer. I knew he loved a chain in this format because of his big playability, and I felt like I could capitalize on him, valuing him a little higher than the market. I also felt like he valued Andrews a little lower than the market. So I really wanted to take advantage of that. And anytime you have an opening to move for Justin Jefferson, you have to take advantage. You have to try and do it and see it through. So we were able to come to that agreement. And quite honestly, my biggest takeaway from it is this wouldn't have gotten done if we didn't talk through it while we were negotiating. It wasn't just counter. It was, okay, we're close here, but I don't really like this. I don't like that. Okay, what if we try this? What if we try that? And honestly, if we hadn't talked, it probably wouldn't have happened. So I don't really love the no, I don't talk and trade stance. I get it, I guess, because you're kind of limiting your upside in that if you play your hand, the other guy might just give you a sweet value. But I also think you're kind of limiting your overall potential to get deals done, and I don't like that. So I'm a talker. I like to talk in my trades, and I think that helped me get Justin Jefferson here. So
Yeah, and when you kind of plug in the values here, you see a relatively even trade in like overall value. However, I love your side personally. I mean, you're getting you're getting Andrews in a tight end premium, and really there's a lot of risk on the other side. There's a lot of upside on the other side, but there's a lot of risk in the other side.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a beautiful trade. I definitely love that one for you. We were all very excited. You woke up first thing in the morning and messaged us.
I did. It was a good morning. I was like, I think it's gonna be the morning. Finally, it was almost like Christmas morning, you know. My first Jefferson share, actually. So
All right, so we're going to hop into our rapid fire trades. I'm going to throw to JP first, a start 11 competing team, 103 or Brandon Ayuk and Chris Godwin.
This is pretty interesting. I'm somebody who is very high on Brandon Ayuk, so it is pretty tough. I think since it is the start 11, I am slightly going to lean the package, and that's just because I have Brandon Ayuk as a top 12 dynasty wide receiver, and just the wide receiver in this range would be Malik Neighbors, who I see them pretty similarly, just in stacked rankings. So yeah, I'll just take the extra piece in a start 11 here.
Can't blame you for that. Definitely a close one. 103 or AJ Brown, David. Which direction are you going?
I think for most roster constructions, I'll go ahead and stick with the pick there. If I don't need a quarterback, if I'm trying to compete and I do need a stud, I will consider AJ Brown. But I do have Malik Neighbors a little higher, so even receiver to receiver, I'm preferring the pick. I
Ooh,
think in most situations.
Spicy. I think I'd make the same choice there on most rosters, though. JP, start 10 Superflex 103 and 112, or Anthony Richardson and the 208.
man, this one is also a very tough one. I think we chose some very fair trades. Here I am going. I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson and the 208. I love the quarterbacks going to be available at 103, but just where their market value is, they're not being valued at a end of the first round or even beginning of the second round startup evaluation right now.
Yeah, I think I like the value on that side a little bit as well. Not super sold on Anthony Richardson, but I think you can do a lot more with him potentially in a future trade down the road. So I like that. Start 11 Superflex 1.5 tight end premium 103 Dalton Kincaid or CJ Stroud. Where are we going, David?
Yeah, I'm taking Stroud. I know Kincaid has some upside. 103 is a good pick, but you don't get the opportunity to buy elite QBs for a reason. Stroud in some people's minds QB3 right now in Dynasty. So even if you're just looking from a value perspective, I think Stroud's a clear answer.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I'm pretty sure you said you would be willing to move the 101 and Kincaid to move up into this range. So I think you're probably happy with the 103, huh?
Yes, sir. I think you are correct, actually. I think that was one of the players I mentioned in the 101 episode.
I re-listened to that this morning. It's a good listen if you haven't listened to it yet. So now that we've sharpened our acumen a little bit, getting a little bit of a idea about the market, what's going on, we're going to make up some of our own trades for some hypothetical situations we're dealing with. So first of all, in a competing team that's holding this 103, really happy to have this ammo to try to improve, does not need QB. What type of deals are you looking to make, JP?
All right, so if I'm set at quarterback and yeah, if I'm competing, I'd be pretty motivated to move this 103 pick at the moment. I'd be looking at the running back. I'd be looking to see if I can get Brees and Bijan. I don't know if you can get it straight up, but you got to at least try. I might
You
even
could for
throw in a
me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd even throw in a third or something. But those guys, I mean, they're valued in the second round of startups right now, and I love those two running backs very, very much. And at the wide receiver side, I'd I'd be looking to explore, Tyreek Hill. I mean, an underdog. He's been drafted as a top three wide receiver. That's probably what a lot of people are expecting him to be, at least a top four per game fantasy wide receiver this year. So I just because of his age, I might need a little bit of a kicker. You just want to explore all kinds of options. I'm very high on Drake London as well. I think he could be a top 12 wide receiver this year, and he's very, very young as well. And you might even be able to get something on top of that as well. I personally have Neighbors in London back to back, but I think people are going to value the 103 higher than Drake London. So you could probably get even a second round pick back in that kind of scenario. David, let's say you took over an orphan and the roster is it's not very good. and you need to split this into more assets. How are you handling a trade down from the 103?
Yeah, most orphans aren't the best, right? That's why they're orphans. So let's start by looking at some more trades from Dynasty Daddy, just to get a little more reference here. Apologies. 103 for Waddle and a 25 first. We also have 103 and a 25 third for a 25 first, McBride and Traylon Burks. Then we have a Christian Watson and a package of first for 103, some late first. It looked like 110, 112, and a 26 first. I think if you can get especially 3 firsts and then a dart throw like that, that's great value. Waddle's a cornerstone asset. Getting him in a first, that's great. McBride in a first. Also, there was some other junk in that trade, but basically McBride in a first. I love all those deals. I think if I can stay in the 106 to 108 range, that's kind of what my goal is. But I understand most people see that those are also very valuable picks, so you might have to like add a little if you're trying to get a first. If you can stay in the top 5, I'd pretty much give like whatever you're going to give me. Essentially, I view that as a pretty solid tier, pretty flat tier. And if I need assets, then I'll be pretty easy to move back there. Justin, do you see this as a potential tier break? You've been kind of talking about that lately, and I don't think the community views it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of projecting a little bit here, but I mean, that's all we're all doing at this point. So, I mean, right now, I think there is like JP talked in our 102 episode, pretty consensus. Like, there's a 101 and 102, Caleb, Marv, any order you really want to go there. I feel like it's pretty safe to say that there's going to be like one just like sweet landing spot that we're all going to fall in love with. There could be more, but Neighbors to the Chargers, whoever goes to Washington, potentially somebody going to the Vikings, either like a Daniels or a May going to the Vikings, throwing to JJ. All of these types of things could really kind of mix things up a little bit and push that 103 up into that tier, in which case I think it's a potential trade target. So kind of flipping a lot of those trades around, right? Like I'd be ecstatic to move a Bijan or a Brees into the 103 and just like pick up a bargain bin running back at a different, for a second somewhere else and just kind of like get that like value locked up at this 103. So definitely a pick I'm excited to, not overpay for, but if I can purchase at current market value, I think it has the potential to actually appreciate more than like a 101 or 102 does at this point. So that being said, we are going to transition into our selection. Cannot always make a trade. Doesn't stop us from trying. But sometimes, like we said earlier, gonna have to stick and pick in this spot. So if we do have to pick and stick, I'm going to ask for our arguments for the different players here, starting with David.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make a case for Malik Neighbors here. He's currently my 3rd ranked player in this draft. Had the highest PFF offensive grade and receiving grade for wide receivers with at least 50 targets last year. Highest yards per route run, most first downs, 3rd most missed tackles forced. Very productive, just a great profile to look at. You see he was used about 50% in the slot, but he did have a 78th percentile success rate against press, according to reception perception. While not elite, that's still definitely good enough to make me think he can survive outside in the NFL. I kind of expect him to get used kind of like CeeDee Lamb has over the last couple of years. And no, this is not a CeeDee Lamb comp, just kind of how I expect him to get used. So I'm a big fan of Malik Neighbors. I do think if I need a quarterback on my roster, I'm going to consider the quarterbacks here pretty strongly. But ideally, my roster is going to be constructed in a way that allows me to take the player I prefer. And for me, that's Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I cannot blame you. He is a fantastic prospect, wide receiver 1 in last year's class. I definitely agree with you there. Personally, for me, if I'm making the pick, I'm leaning towards taking one of the quarterbacks. And the guy that I'm leaning towards is Drake May, somebody that I love. And to kind of open up conversation, between Jaden Daniels and Drake May, I kind of want to illustrate some things that I'm a little bit worried about Jaden Daniels. Some things that I'm going to talk about things I like about him as well. But some of the things that I am worried about with Jaden Daniels is he had on 50.6% of his pressure dropbacks, 50% of the time that he was pressured, it resulted in either a sack or a scramble, which was 193rd of 196 quarterbacks in the last the last 10 draft classes. So yeah, I am a little bit worried about if he trusts his reads, if he just too, just eager to just take off. He also isn't really throw across the middle as much as I'd like to see. Only 9.3% of his dropbacks did he throw in the intermediate parts over the middle. That does worry me a little bit too, because if you're not doing it in college, it's just going to get harder in the NFL. I know that's some of the worry with somebody like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray a little bit, but when it comes to Drake May, I think that he does those things really well. I think he's got a great feel for the pocket. Dude, the team that he played for, UNC, was pretty darn bad. He was drifting away from pressure before it even came. He has a really strong arm. He throws over the middle. He's one of the best deep passers in all of college football last year. I just think that when you're looking at him, he's the prototype of Josh Allen, the Justin Herbert type. These guys, they can play in structure, but in the playoffs when it matters, they will run and take off. They will, while they're on the run, they have the arm talent to just make a crazy throw. He has all that. But with that being said, I also really, really like Jaden Daniels a lot too. I'm a little bit worried about if he's going to be a franchise quarterback more so than I am with Drake May. But when it comes to fantasy football, which this is what we're talking about, when you have a rushing quarterback, these guys are always finishing in the top 12 in fantasy football on a year-to-year basis, because rushing is a cheat code. It's called that for a reason, because these guys, they don't even have to be that great as NFL passers to be great fantasy quarterbacks.
Yeah, and speaking a little bit on that, those sack numbers for Daniels. So we do see a pretty stark improvement from 2022 to 2023. In 2022, from a sack perspective, took 43 sacks. 2023, that was essentially halved to 22 sacks. So love to see that improvement, developing more pocket presence. The rushing upside case is obviously incredible. Won the Heisman, like you said, but one thing that I really love about him compared to a lot of other kind of rushing prospects we see coming out, 40-4 touchdown to interception ratio in 2023, 17-3 in 2022. Even though he didn't have as prolific of a numbers season in 2022, still a great ratio there. So I love to see that. At the end of the day, I'm a Daniels guy. JP's pulling for May, and David is pulling for Neighbors. So I almost broke up the podcast, but in the end, I decided to use a executive decision, bring the gavel down, and say we are going to select Jaden Daniels right here. Go ahead and really capitalize on that potential rushing upside. We do want to acknowledge that given more information, this is definitely subject to change. But as of right now, I think this is a very much so a potential league winner.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to deny that rushing upside of the Heisman winner, right?
Yeah, I love him. I'm going to be banging the drum for him probably through the whole draft season. So thank you for joining us for another episode of our series of Framing a Redraft. We hope you found this as useful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you view and listen. And from all of us here at Dino Construction, until next time.